there. Welcome to the Pruskop Podcast. My name is Megan Prusko, and I'm a residential and multifamily realtor here in Edmonton, Alberta. If you're looking to learn about fix and flips, this is going to be a fantastic episode to listen to. We are interviewing Jay Vettivel, who is a full-time flipper and GC. He shares his trials, triumphs, tribulations, tips, and tricks. I know that's a lot of alliteration. I couldn't help myself. But he shares a lot of really great experience and knowledge for you to learn from. If you're looking to learn more about real estate in general, then please let me know the kind of content you're looking for, but you just can't find. I would love to cover that for you. As always, please like and subscribe. It goes a super long way. I hope you enjoy the conversation just as much as I did. Welcome, Jay, to the Pruskop Podcast. I'm so glad you can join me this episode.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Absolutely. I look forward to it.
You and I originally met when I first started real estate. You were actually in one of our ponds, we call them. So a bunch of leads that we have. We had coffee, and something that I really liked about you is you told me I was wrong. So I was running through a property that I worked on back in my construction days, and you're like, those numbers don't sound right. And I was just using numbers that someone told me about, and then I repeated those numbers to you, and you're like, that's not right. And I was like, yeah, they are. And you're like, no. And then you broke it down, and I was like, I actually really like that you called me out, and not that I was trying to be deceitful, but yeah, you were on top of it, and then you actually educated me on that. So that was really great.
Yeah, actually, it was a very memorable meeting for me as well because you had a lot of intimate knowledge about construction. It's very memorable about you. Yeah.
Eventually, I think we had coffee, and you brought your daughter with you, and she broke a glass at the restaurant. She was so cute, though. Nobody could be
Yeah,
mad at
no,
her.
sometimes naughty duties, but you gotta multitask. Yeah.
Yep. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
we'll jump into some questions that I have here for you. How did you become a contractor? What led you into the world of construction?
It was by happen chance actually, because no, I was happily just trudging along in my corporate world, and real estate has always been kind of in the back of my mind that I wanted to do. I figured the best thing for me, the best way I wanted to get involved in real estate was actually to do flips. I wasn't so much interested in long-term buy and holds. I was more focused on flips because I wanted to replace essentially my income, and the fastest, easiest way to do it is to do flips. But it's more active income, but that's what I wanted to do. I was just actually trying to just get a GC to come in and do it for me. Long story short, I ended up actually having to GC the project myself and learn the hard way, right? Learn to sink or swim kind of thing. Learn by getting thrown into the fire.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes. How many
Yeah,
flips have you done?
I've done 5 so far.
5 since 2020, you said?
21, I think 21 or 22. I can't remember the exact time we actually took possession of that property. I think we closed in 22 when we sold it.
Have you ever made an error on a project that really sucked at the time, but now on your future projects, you're like, oh, I got to look out for that. In the end, it's actually saving you money, your time.
A few actually. One of the major landmines, I think, for a lot of new investors is nailing down your ARV. It's really critical.
And what
And
is ARV?
after repair value, sorry, what you hope to expect to sell the property for once it's fully renovated, right? And that's a tricky one to nail down because most people think, oh, it's pretty easy, right? All you have to do is just go to the market and look at what's sold in the last 6 months and look for similar renovated properties, quote unquote, and see how much they sold for. And you can ballpark expect to get that kind of number for your property. That doesn't always pan out that way. It's really tricky, right? Nailing down the ARV. And that only comes with experience, right? Day about experience. So I would say part of the biggest mistakes I made on the very first flip I bought, which I lost money on, was one, I was doing the renovation catered towards like a family. It was a very mature neighborhood, great location, close to everything, ideal for a family to move into and use that space. And I was doing all my renovations with that kind of end user in mind for that kind of family, right? Not like a starter home or like a retirement home or something like that. But the biggest downfall of that property that I couldn't overcome was it was a single car garage. And that was a massive hit on the ARV for me. And that's how I, for the most part, ended up losing money on that deal. It was because of that single car garage. One of the actual buyers who didn't actually pull the trigger, they had a third party appraisal from the bank sent out to the property. And the appraiser came back and he took off $43,000 from a comp because it was a single car garage compared to a double car garage. Now, mind you, it doesn't cost you that much to even build a garage.
Yeah,
Maybe nowadays it might, but
isn't like a double bay garage around like 35, maybe 45?
yeah, since then the costs have gone up a little because this was pre-COVID. So now you're probably looking at depending on what you're doing. Let's say 40K to build a garage, like a double car garage, turnkey. But that's how much it took off my ARV. And the banks refused to lend to the buyers, and that's how buyers backed out of the deal. And I kept doing a price reduction and price improvement eventually until it sold. And this was a time pre-COVID and market wasn't doing great either. I think now it would have been totally fine. But yeah, so the biggest landmine to avoid if you're a new investor looking to invest in as a fix and flip strategy, one is make sure you get your ARV correct. And ARV is not, I guess the biggest mistake, the insight is that ARV is not just sold comp. That is not the same as saying ARV, right?
Can you
The
explain the difference?
easiest way for anybody to think, okay, how do I determine the ARV? It's not some fictitious, mysterious number. How do I get that after repair value, right? So if you just look at the sold comp, it wouldn't help at all, right? If you ask me. And the reason is because when you're doing a certain type of renovations, let's say like a mature neighborhood here in Edmonton, like a neighborhood, let's say Bonnie Doon. Okay. Bonnie Doon has a variety of properties in that neighborhood, right? Obviously, it's a great location. It's well sought after, mature neighborhood, close to everything, all of that. So obviously, it's very, from that perspective, location perspective, it's fantastic. But you have so many varieties of properties in there. You have multifamilies in there, you have infills in there, and you have those duplexes in there, and you have those old bungalows in there, and you have
Yep.
those renovated bungalows in there. So you have a spectrum of different types of properties that are in that neighborhood, right? So how do you actually determine your ARV? It's, I guess it comes from experience, that trained eye over time. But you really have to keep in mind the type of property that you have, the type of layout that you have, and the type of end user that you actually try to attract as the buyers, right? And how you vision they're going to use that space and what they might want in a space like that. And then you renovate to their neighborhood. Every neighborhood has a ceiling, right? Even if it's Bonnie Doon, doesn't mean you're going to build a $5 million house and try to hope to sell it. It's not going to work, right? So every neighborhood has a ceiling you need to keep in mind as well. So don't over renovate. But at the same time, you want to have a product that doesn't compete just on price, but also it's a very unique product that stands out when you do the listing. So there's a lot that goes into determining the value, quote unquote, value from an end user or the buyer. You got to keep that in mind. So if you only look at, okay, what sold in the last 6 months and how much did it sell for? Oh, this one sold for 450 to 520. That's my range. Great. So my ARV is 520. On the top end, maybe 500 conservatively. Incorrect. You can get 570 for it if you want, if you renovate it correctly and market it, position it correctly in the market for the right buyer. And you
Yeah, I
have to
think what you
know that
said with having the end user in mind, like from the beginning, because I feel like you could really easily get tunnel vision with what kind of products or finishes and maybe make it to your preferences, but that's not who is going to be paying top dollar. So you really got to cater your finishes and layout to who is going to pay top dollar for this product that I'm making.
100%. So don't substitute past recently sold properties for ARVs, right?
Yep.
Easy mistake to make, but don't do that.
Something you mentioned was communities all have different caps for what you can get for them for ARV. We call it elasticity. So, like,
Mhm.
certain areas are like really elastic with what you can get for your price. Like, it can range a lot. And then certain areas, you can put millions of dollars into the renovation, let's say, but it's still only going to be worth a maximum of X. So, what neighborhoods are really elastic with what you can get for ARV versus pretty set?
The premier A-class neighborhoods, right? So like Parkview, Laurier Heights, those neighborhoods will do really well for flips. On the south side, you have Aspen Gardens. Lots of, for the most part, west end of Edmonton does really well, like Glenora, Laurier Heights, in and around there, adjacent to all those neighborhoods hugging the River Valley there, will do
Mm-hmm.
really well. On the south side, predominantly most of them will do well. Majority of those properties, that neighborhoods will do really well. Where I would see a hard cap would be, even though it's a great neighborhoods, Doon, for example, actually is a great example for that. Right, Doon, Artwell, Holyrood, Strathern, all of those neighborhoods are fantastic for flips, but you do have a ceiling on them as well. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
in a neighborhood like Laurier Heights, for example, you can do quite a very nice reno and sell it for quite a bit of money, and you still be able to attract that buyer. The easy way to determine that is when you list your property, does it look like a sore thumb sticking out? No, do you know what I mean? Or does it blend into the rest of the listings in that neighborhood? That's why sometimes having a mixed community is great. So sometimes the way I think about it is, okay, if I could have a 1,400 square foot bungalow, which is massive, on a massive lot, double car garage, and if I could renovate that and make that better than that brand new infill, then my property would be more attractive than that property. Because if you think about it, 1,400 square foot bungalow, total living space, if you finish the basement as well, you're looking at 2,800 square feet. And
Yep.
these custom infills, right? They're like what, 1,600 square feet above ground.
Mm-hmm.
So total maximum living space you can potentially develop in that space is still the same. So from a square footage perspective, it's the same. But in a bungalow, well, it's much more open concept, right? And you have much bigger land as well, mature land as
Yeah,
well,
this is
right?
a little bit off topic, but I've noticed a lot of people prefer bungalows to two stories that I work with for buyers. Do you see that as well?
I think so. Like when I'm trying to look at a comps, I look at, so in other words, if I'm doing a bungalow in a mature neighborhood, but I have a big bungalow, so square footage obviously matters, right?
Mm.
So size matters. But but my competition is really, I would look at those infills as my competition and not other bungalows. Do you know what I mean? Because
Mhm.
I'm trying to pry that buyer that's looking at that custom infill. I'm like, hey, come take a look at my property. Let me see you play with the value proposition here. If I've replaced everything, the roof, the windows, the siding, the furnace, the hot water tank, the electrical panel, if all of that's been redone and everything is completely gutted on the inside and refinished, right? So essentially, the house is new. Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Obviously, we do all our work with city permits and everything, so there's no concerns with that as well. So if it is new and I have an open concept and I have an ensuite, I have everything, and I have the same square footage, but it's obviously more open feeling, which people prefer.
Mhm.
What's more attractive? And plus, if I can finish it better than a custom infill home, right? What's more attractive to you? Now it's a hard choice for the buyer to make. But those infills would go for 750, 800, 850, 900 easily.
Yeah.
Whereas if you see again, going back to that ARV question, right? If you see sold comps for similar bungalows, they might sell for 550 to 600. But I might try to push that ARV up to 650, 700. But I'm trying to finish it a different way. So I can attract those buyers who would otherwise look at those infills instead.
Something surprising I've seen from buyers is a lot of them will actually prefer older bone homes to new infills. Although the new infills are shiny and sparkly, they will often prefer flips from the 70s, 80s, 90s just because they feel that the builds were done a lot better in the olden days than they're doing right now. What do you think about that?
Yes and no. I think the building science have improved a lot since that time, but I think maybe the material itself was better back in the days. Like the wood was literally a lot
Oh,
better, and some of these older
I've
neighborhoods
seen
have
some old lumber that
even
just
drywall.
beautiful.
Yeah, whereas modern building construction materials sometimes they're not the same standards. But the building science itself has improved, I think, I would say, compared to how it was like 30, 40 years ago. So it's a given, it's a mixed bag there. But either way, you can't go wrong as long as you have quality workmanship either built 50 years ago, even today. So
Mm.
houses built today could be really poor quality. And likewise, you have some really good builders with a lot of integrity that build great products. And I would have no hesitation buying those products. So yeah, I think that's a mute point. It really depends on who's doing the work at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So.
I am curious, what was the most successful flip you've done and what was the least successful?
The least successful probably was the one that I just did, my very
Your
first
first
one. That
one?
yeah, that I lost money on, which was a very painful experience. Lots of lessons learned on that one actually. And the most successful, ever since then, we started making more and more money. I've been more and more successful in my flips. We just closing on two, I think it should be wrapping up this week now. Two flips, one on the opposite end of the spectrum as well. So one was like for Edmonton anyway, more high-end home. We sold that one for just over 800, 803, I believe.
Nice.
And then we sold a townhouse for 250 as well. So one on the
Where is
affordable
the
spectrum.
neighborhood of the 800 one?
That one was in Twin Brooks on the south
And what
side.
about the other one that you're doing?
That was in Millwoods.
No, it's
The townhouse, yeah. The townhouse was in Millwoods, and that was more on the affordable end of that spectrum, right?
Mhm.
Like a starter home for a family.
What are you expecting to walk away with, like all expenses paid for your 800 versus your townhouse?
The net gross profit, let's call it that way. Townhouse, you're looking at just over 50. Again, we'll know the numbers once we get the payout statements, etc.
Mhm.
But townhouse, we're probably looking at just over 50. And for that one in Twin Brooks, we're probably looking at just over 60, close to
That's
60-ish.
really good.
Yeah.
Other flippers that I've talked to, they usually say on average, of course, it'll depend if you get a steal of a deal. There's a lot of factors. But on average, flippers I talk to, they expect to have right around 30K take home after all expenses have been paid.
That's more reasonable, actually. So I'm not going to make myself look like a genius. Honestly, I think we're just being helped by a really healthy seller's market right now. So that's where the extra little cash came in. But when we were doing the deal, when we were underwriting that deal, we were projecting about 40K, 40 to 50K potential more for that Twin Bricks one, and about 30 to 40K for that townhouse. But the market conditions are such that there's barely any inventory in the market right now,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of active buyers still looking to buy. So a turnkey product is going off the shelf really well, like really fast.
Mhm.
And they're selling well over asking. So we just market is helping us as well. We have a lot of tailwinds, so that's also helping.
That's a
But
good way
besides
of
that,
putting it. Yeah.
yeah,
And I know when I first started talking to you, you made it clear that you're more interested in the south side. Can you explain
mhm.
why you prefer the south side?
This is not a scientific answer, okay?
Mhm.
But the path of development feels more like south of Edmonton rather than in any other direction. Pointing case would be like the new land that the city acquired like last few years. It's all in the south side. That's where the city is growing. It's growing in the south, a little bit to the west end, a little bit to the north, but it's predominantly growing on the south side. You have
Mhm.
Beaumont that's growing, Leduc that's growing, and you have the airport, and then you have Red Deer and Calgary on the south
Leduc
of the
is
city.
popping. Holy. Yep.
Exactly. So the city is growing more rapidly on the south side than in any other direction. And generally speaking, I think neighborhoods in the south side are better. Historically, they just have been better neighborhoods, right? More geared towards families and that kind of thing. I think that's just the way the city is, because the city is split by the river down the middle, right? I think
Mhm.
older parts of the city are obviously on the north side, and south side over the river on the south side was like Strathcona, I think used to be called, right? Way back then. So I think it developed on a different path, maybe. So for whatever reason, it's just south side seems to do really well in terms of having mature, desirable neighborhoods that families want to move in, really good schools, really good access to shopping and transportation, all that things.
Yeah, so you just hit on a couple points of the next question I wanted to ask you, which is what do you look for in a property? What boxes have to get checked? So you mentioned being near schools, being near malls. You prefer the south side personally. What else do you look for that makes you think, oh, this could be a really good option?
Actually, I look at it the other way around initially, right? It's easier to filter out properties by looking at what I don't like about that property and immediately dismiss it. For example, I don't do properties that backs onto the main road. Again, otherwise, unless the price is so good, then I will take it. Then it would make sense, right? At
Mhm.
certain price, any deal becomes a good deal, right? So right off the bat, I was like, okay, it's back onto the main road. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, I don't want it. It's easier to do that than to say, I want that particular type of property in this neighborhood, and then let's see if I can go find one, right? It's easier
Mhm.
to actually cross them out than it is to filter them through.
What about
But
the structure itself? Is there anything you look for? Like you mentioned that double bay garage is something that dinged you. So now are you only looking for ones with double bay garages?
big time. So not backing onto the road is a big thing. Single car garage is a big thing, to the point where even if the house is great location, everything's fantastic, I would genuinely consider demoing, even if you built it last year, I would genuinely consider demoing that garage down and building a double car garage if I was to take on that deal. Do you know what I mean? Even if it was a
Yeah,
brand new garage that you've just built last year, I don't care.
you
It
learned
wouldn't
your
make any sense
lesson.
to me. Besides that, what I look for in a property, again, if I'm doing like a more like a high-end upmarket type of product, I would look for square footage. You cannot substitute for square footage, right? So square footage is really important. Again, thinking about the buyers and what sort of people would be looking to move into the neighborhood, you definitely want to do like an ensuite. So if I'm doing a bungalow, like typically the layout would be like 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom upstairs in Edmonton. But if I have the square footage, I would definitely turn one of the bedrooms into an ensuite and a walk-in closet for the master and give that bedroom back in the basement, right? That's really important. Having open concept is really important. Having a big, nice kitchen, like a gathering spot for
Hmm.
get-togethers is really important. So square footage is really important. Layout is really important, right? Like no major red flags, right?
Hmm.
That's you don't want to be right in front of elementary school or something, right? Good luck getting your car out in the mornings, right? So that's really important. For example, I would never, if personally myself, I would never move into Belgravia. Like I
Oh,
wouldn't live there.
really?
No,
Why
never.
not?
The traffic there is horrendous.
Yeah, that's right by the U of A.
I've actually worked with the builder because I've been on the block now. I worked with the builder and he was building a custom home for a client there. And they demoed the house that they've lived in for a long time and they were building their home. And getting in and out of the neighborhood there it was a nightmare. Like especially during the morning and evening rush hours, it was terrible, right?
It's just the infrastructure.
Yeah, because you have very
Because
few
that area
through
is
roads.
beautiful.
For a flip, yeah, 100%. I would do a flip there any day. It's really sought after, fantastic
Hmm.
location. It's wonderful in every other way. But besides that, in a house, square footage is really important. Layout, the floor plan, believe it or not, is actually really important. Unique characteristics about that property. For example, if you have a wafted ceiling, that helps a lot. Or if you have sometimes the split level or bi-level houses are really nice because they have basement windows above ground and they're big. So they already meet egress qualifications for basement bedrooms. So you have to cut concrete. That's fantastic. Saves you the money there. But it's just like lots of natural lighting, which is
Hmm.
obviously you'd want that, right? So it doesn't feel like a basement as much. So split level houses are fantastic. I like those a lot as well. Yeah, like things that makes a property that you have to have the vision for it. But when it's fully done, does it feel like a nice luxury upmarket kind of product, right? I keep using the word product, but really what you really want to do is not compete on price. So you don't want productized product on the market,
The
meaning you don't want a
productized.
you don't want to have a cookie cutter looking house on the market. When they walk in, they got to be like, wow. When they see the pictures, when you go on the listings, you're like, wow,
Hot
let's go check out
damn,
that.
look at this house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You fall in love with the house, I guarantee you'll be more than happy to pay 10, 15, 20 grand extra for it just to get
Mhm.
that house because you fell in love with it. You would
Yeah,
pay
you
that,
were
no problem.
mentioning that layout's really important, but if I knew nothing about construction, I would say, Jay, why is layout important of the existing structure if we can just take out walls?
Right. So it's not just about taking out walls. One, it is true, you got to take out walls, but you really got to think about the floor and also the cost to do some of this work, right? Like I've replaced like I've installed structural beams all the time, and they don't always just work. It's not just about opening a couple of walls. It's really not like that at all. Like I walked away from deals. I kid you not. If in the listing, if the realtors have the floor plan up, I really appreciate that, and I really look at that a lot.
Hmm.
And I study it. So we have this here. What if we move this wall here and open up that space like this, and then we move the kitchen from where the dining is into where the living room is, and make that the living room and this the dining room. We can do the layout like this. But then you got to think about it. But your main stack is over here. So if you're gonna do the plumbing now, you got to put another stack down and trench concrete from here to there. But the basement's already finished. Do you want to dig up all your flooring now and cut concrete and run? So like that, it's a lot of thought process that goes into changing the floor plan and the layout to make the best, highest use of that space,
And then,
right?
of course, the price
And then
tag that
that
goes along with it
price
and the
that goes with it.
labor.
So now all of a sudden, you would think that, hey, they would look the same. So this one, someone tells me it's going to cost me 80 grand or 100 grand or 120 grand to renovate. And this one, you tell me it's going to cost me 140 grand. Why? It doesn't make any sense. It looks almost the same. Yeah, but the work is very different to get to that finished stage because what you're starting with is very different. That, and also obviously just use of that space itself, it's really important as well. So ideally, what I look for is if I can have the living room, kitchen, and the dining room all in one space on one level and sprawling, as open as possible, with like a vaulted ceiling or coffered ceiling or something like that would be fantastic. That
Do
would
you
be good.
find most of your deals on or off market?
A little bit of both. I've done deals off market and I got deals on the MLS as well.
Yeah, I feel like there's four kinds of buyers out there. There's the out of province investors, the out of province primaries, there's the local investors, and then the local primaries. And I think they're taking turns one upping each other on who's willing to pay more. And I feel like the local either investor or primary buyers are just getting outperformed in general by the out of province investors. Have you seen that yourself?
Yeah, I have actually. I've been outbid by people coming in from out of province as well. Maybe they have a deeper pockets. They can absorb some of the carrying cost and pay out of pocket. I'm not sure. I'm sure they in the back end the numbers work different, right? Because a lot of these guys are very sophisticated as well, coming in from like Vancouver and Toronto especially, right? They're sophisticated investors. They're not, they're not ignorant about what's happening. But yeah, I can't compete with them on their margins. I stayed in my lane and do the deals that make sense to me and only pay what I can pay for it, right?
Talking
So
about out of province investors, a really common question I get from people in BC that are looking to buy here and do burrs or flips are actually about trees. If there's a tree on the property that you want to get rid of, do you need to get a permit or will you get a fine for cutting that tree down?
I guess it depends, right? I hate that answer, it depends, but I guess
Yeah.
sometimes it does depend. But yeah, so if you have a boulevard, I think boulevard is the type of street where you have your lawn, sidewalk, and another piece of lawn as well, right? If the
Mhm.
tree's on that, it does not belong to you, technically.
Yep.
So you can't just go and cut it down. But if you have shrubs and small trees, I usually take them down. I don't have any issues with it. But sometimes you have like utility right away, right? You have power lines. Because if you're cutting the tree down, if you have a massive tree, you have to also grind down the stumps as well.
Yep.
Got to be careful, right? So you got to make sure you get the permits in place and you're running by the city just to be on the safe side before you take it down. Sometimes it's also the neighbors as well. Might have loved the tree and you took it down. Now they're really upset about it and they may just complain. You never know. And that's not an uncommon occurrence.
Trees
So
are a hot topic for people, very polarizing, which is very strange. But I was talking to an investor in BC, and he was saying that over there, if you're looking to redevelop or flip, or you're getting rid of the tree for whatever reason, that you need to get a permit for it. And if you cut down the tree without the permit, not only do you get a fine, the city will also, off the record, push your permit file to the bottom of the pile and they'll just ignore you. So some people there have been sneaky and they're pouring hot water on the tree roots to kill it because they might actually test it. They've done that before to see if you're intentionally poisoning the tree, but nothing will show up with hot water. And I don't know, that's just something that I found really interesting that I
that is
haven't heard of
interesting. Yeah.
here in Edmonton, but I get asked a lot, what about the trees? Can we cut down the trees? And
It's
I don't think it's
definitely
really a problem here.
no, I think if it's on your land, like on your land proper, then ultimately you can take it down. I'm pretty sure 100% that you can take it down. If you want to clear the land and develop the land, you're allowed to do that. But the only thing is, the city does require you to actually do landscaping. So you have to actually plant it back. You can take it off, you can cut it down. Let's say for infill guys who are looking to do developments, you can take it down, but you have to do landscaping and part of all the grading for the soil and all that stuff. But you also have to plant back the trees. So technically, you're going to give it back, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
you're taking out a mature tree, planting back certain
Little thing.
growth. In Edmonton, I don't think it's as draconian, but I don't think there'll be any issues for you taking down the tree ultimately. But when it comes to tree, that you pointed it out, it's really important that I always do pay attention in these mature neighborhoods. If they have a massive tree in the front, I always do a sewer scope.
Yes.
Because these true trees, obviously old growth, they have deep roots. And a lot of times these sewer lines back in the days, they have clay pipes and they collapse the clay pipes, right?
Yeah.
So you have sewer backing
Or
up into the
tar
house as
paper
well.
lines. Like,
Exactly. So if you have a massive tree either on your lot or in your adjacent neighbors' lots, then maybe think about doing a sewer scope.
yeah, anybody listening that's looking to buy a property, I don't care what kind of property you're looking at. I don't care how old or new it is, get a sewer scope. Even the new builds, a lot of the sewer lines are not at the right slope, so the drainage won't work or construction debris will be in it. The ones that are
Yeah.
around 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, that's what we're talking about with the clay tile or the tar paper lining. They can collapse or tree roots can get into them. Like, always get a sewer scope. My guy, it only costs $200, including
Yeah.
GST. It's worth it.
100% worth it. Yeah.
It's 10 to 15 grand to replace those and a huge pain as well.
Yeah. No, it's not fun experience. So I would highly recommend that if you see trees in and around your property, then definitely get a sewer scope. But
So I actually want to run through the two properties that you have, starting with your 800K one over in Twin Brooks. What did you purchase that one for?
465, I believe.
465 and you're selling it for 800? Holy smokes. So you do the work yourself, but you also have some contractors that you work with and manage. So you GC your own flips, right?
Mhm.
Between labor and materials, how much ish do you think it would be?
I think that one we were into it for all in. I think we're looking at around 240-ish. Again, I think we'll know once we have all the numbers settled, the dust settles, right? But yeah, I think we're all into it for 240. That includes the holding costs, realtors fees, all of that, everything.
Okay, so that
Sorry,
includes all the rest of the costs.
no, just under the reno. So 1 second. That one, I know for a fact it was over 200 for the reno.
Just
Yeah.
for the material and labor alone?
Yeah. It's an extensive reno though, right? That's the thing. That essentially was turned into a brand new house, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
And then you said you'd be walking away with roughly 60, you're estimating?
Yeah. Break even was, I think we were all into it for, I think just about 740, right around 740. So we're looking at about 60-ish, 60 and some change all in.
And then what about your townhouse? What did you buy that one for?
Townhouse, that was actually my own lead. So from my own marketing, I got it off market.
Nice.
So the Twin Brooks, I got it on the market on the MLS. Townhouse, they reached out to me directly for my marketing campaign. And so I got under contract myself directly off market. And I got it for 140.
Whoa, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I mean,
What's the square footage
that's
on
why
that bad boy?
I think it was just under 1,000, maybe 930, 940, something like that.
Was it falling apart and reeking like cat pee? Why'd you get it for such
No,
a good deal?
no. The buyers was in a circumstance where they were just getting foreclosed on and they needed a quick close, right? And they were more than happy to take the offer I gave them, which they were like delighted about. And we gave them extended closing as well. We worked with them for their move out dates and all of that.
So you
But
bought
yeah,
that one for 140, and then how much material and labor costs did you put in there?
labor material probably looking around just under 40.
40K?
Like 30, I think it's gonna be after appliances and everything as well. I think we're looking at 37, 38, give or take, around there. Yeah.
What consists of holding costs for people listening? What counts as that?
Sure. So look at the townhouse one, right? So your holding cost, well, strictly only holding cost will be your condo fee, your property tax, your property insurance, utilities, right? And then obviously your interest and principal, but interest on your financing cost. That's strictly only holding cost. But on top of that, the full financial transaction cost would include also your realtor's fee, your lawyer's fee, right? Any adjustments that they do for the property tax when you buy and sell. But the realtor's fee, obviously, on the sale end, and lawyer's fee on the buy and the sale.
And then that one you said you're walking away with your projected 40. Is that what you said?
No, we were conservative running our numbers because I always run my numbers conservatively. So I'm like, yeah, easily we can make 30K, but obviously there's room for us to make more, but we can make 30K, but we're going to end up making closer to like 50. I think all in we'll be into it for about 50.
That's
Right?
great.
Labor, all the holding costs, soft cost, like we call it the soft cost, and construction cost is your hard cost. So hard and soft cost, all in will be into it for just about 50, just over 50-ish. And yeah, so we'll be making a handsome return.
I know a lot of flippers want to stay away from townhouses because the first thing that comes to their head are condo fees. I don't want to pay for those. Do you find condo fees are an issue or not?
Yes and no. I guess it may depend on the location. When you're looking at a townhouse, you really are looking at like an entry, starter home for a family, Do you know what I mean? Like a starting point, right? That's your first home you're going to buy, and you're concerned about cost. So I try, if I could, to keep my condo fees at 350 or less. If I, because that's reasonable. Because
Mhm.
obviously you can find condo boats, condominiums where fees are lower than that, and you're going to find lots of fees are higher than that. So if you're a buyer, shopping around, looking to buy a townhouse because that's what you can afford for your budget or whatnot, you'll be looking at the condo fees lots and lots of times. So by the time you looked at 20 different townhouses, you'll come to the realization, if I want a decent townhouse, I'm looking to spend like 320, 330, 280, or 350, 380 for condo fee. They'll become numb to that number because
Yeah.
they don't have any other choice. Do you know what I mean? So that's like a market median or average, if you will, around 350. I think more than you'd be okay with that kind of fee, give or take somewhere around there. But more important than that is also making sure that the condo board itself is managed really well. So
Yes,
they have a
that's
healthy
huge.
reserve fund. Reserve fund is really important, and there's no special assessments coming down the pipeline. That's also really important as well. And a good telltale sign of that, like a canary in the coal mine, for example, for that would be number of units bought and sold in that unit in that complex in the last 6 months or 12 months. So if properties are sitting longer in that complex, it's a good indication that possibly the condo is being mismanaged and there's issues with the condominium board that they may have like special assessments coming, or they don't have enough reserve fund, that kind of thing, right? And you can also tell visually as well if the condo's being maintained well, whatnot,
Yeah.
right?
I just about listed this one property, and unfortunately, we couldn't sell just because they would be selling at a loss with the way that area depreciated. But there was a $7,000 special assessment coming up, which is also called a cash call. And the sellers were trying to get rid of it. But before that special assessment came up, I was talking to the sellers, and then the special assessment came up. They're like, we really need to sell now. And I looked at it before and there was like 2 3 listings, and then afterwards there was like 14 15 listings just of that building. So I know special assessments really hurt because you're not going to be the only one thinking, oh crap, I got to sell. Now you have to compete against all of your neighbors on top of also giving back that 7K to the buyer to accommodate the special assessment so they'll even consider buying your place.
Yeah, that's really important. So make sure you get your condo docs reviewed by a specialist before you take that plunge. If you're
Yep.
looking to flip a townhouse, yeah.
Does it bother you if there's an old furnace or an old hot water tank on a property?
Yeah, bothers me because it bothers the buyers. Yeah, it depends, right? But yeah, usually I would do replace for nicer homes on the higher end. Hot water tank, furnace, electrical panels, we make sure that if it's outdated, we do replace
Mm.
them. So I've replaced all of them. Like Twin Bricks, for example, the hot water tank happened to be in decent condition, like it didn't need to be replaced, so we didn't. But we did put in a new furnace.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had a mid-efficiency furnace, we put in a high-efficiency furnace. And we also roughed in for a future, for the end user, we roughed in vents for air conditioners as well.
Oh,
Because now the
nice.
basement is finished. Because now after the fact they would go do it, they have to rip up all the drywall and run the new vents and plumbing and everything. So we did that for them as well.
Ah, two other things. So I've noticed some flippers, they don't touch the windows. They'll keep those old gross aluminum sliders in there. And then also they won't touch the garage or landscaping. How come those get left behind?
I don't. The Twin Bricks replaced all their windows.
Mm.
We even reframed them to make them modern, some of them. But yeah, we replaced all the windows. I think we had like just over 20 windows to replace in that house. Windows alone, I think 17 grand or something. So we replaced all the windows. The house had cedar shake, and cedar shake, I think if you were to replace that now with the equivalent roof, you'd be looking like, I don't know, 50 grand.
Mm.
Obviously, we didn't do that. So we went with asphalt shingles. So we did the roof. We redid all the brand new windows. Since we were doing the roof as well, we put in the skylights also, right? So no, we don't do that. I normally don't do that. And yeah, even the garage as well. Garage is actually, it could be a money pit, right? Garage is one of those things you death by a thousand cuts, right? Oh, garage. Oh, here's a tricky one. Speaking of garages, right? Oftentimes these garages, they're separate, they're detached from the house, right? These 50s, 60s bungalows. The slab in the garage oftentimes is cracked.
Mm.
If it's cracked, it's okay. But if it's cracked and it's heaving bad, meaning like it's off by like 2, 3 inches, that's a lot to overcome, right? Some of these slabs I've seen are like really horrendously bad. And if you don't pay attention to that, now all of a sudden the end user, the buyer you're looking to sell to, because the house is renovated, but the garage doesn't match the house, but you got to park your car in it. And they look at it like, the garage is basically in a tear down condition. I can't pay for this. Like, it doesn't make any
Yep.
sense,
I had a
right? So be
garage
very
till
careful.
one of my deals. It was a primary, and the house itself was empty, but the garage had a bunch of stuff in it because, the sellers were moving out. And we didn't look too much into the garage and we couldn't see even the slab. But when the inspector came, I was representing the buyers and he pushed on like the back wall of the garage and it literally was like shaking
Yeah,
when he pushed on the
no.
back wall. We saw the slab. And yeah, as you said, it was like heaving. So, like a little crack is fine. A little
Mhm.
crack is fine. But this was like that.
If
It
it's
was
heaving that
bad.
much, it's bad. Yeah. And if it's heaving, it's fissured away in multiple, like a lightning strike.
Yep.
So if it's branching off in multiple directions and it's heaving really bad, you can't say that slab.
Yeah. And my
That's really difficult to say.
buyer, I think his grandpa has a concrete company. So he got his grandpa to give him a quote, and his grandpa giving him the friends and family discount was quoting him like 18K between the slab and fixing up the rest of the driveway that was cracking too.
So
So
that's not necessarily to demo the garage and build a new one. That's just to
no, that's
repair
just
the
to
existing.
repair the slab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One way to do it, because I've looked into it quite a bit as well, because a lot of these slabs are actually monolithic pour. So they're just it's not even a grade on beam. So they're just a monolithic pour. I was thinking maybe I've considered this in the past. I even talked to a couple of engineers about it to see if I can actually make it work. Just socket on the inside, like maybe a foot away from the footing on the outside, socket inside, demo that, rip it out, and then epoxy rebars back into the old slabs and pour a new one. But yeah, short of that, I've had basements also crack and heave as well. Basements I normally do actually just cut and trench down,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then pour new concrete and then sand everything flat and make it smooth. Because they're not structural inside of the house in the basements, but garage, you can only do so much, right? So you can save it to a certain extent, but if it's heaved really bad in multiple places and it's just like fissured really bad, I walked away from that house because I'm like, buyers will not buy it. And what do I do with it? It's gonna cost me, like you said, 10, 15 grand to fix it. I'm not gonna get that money back. It's a money pit, right?
Yeah.
So you
Talking
gotta be very
about
careful.
money pits, what is something that you think like usually new flippers will think it's worth spending money on that ultimately doesn't affect the value of the home or the perceived value of the home?
I think it's the opposite. I don't think they spend enough money.
Mm,
I don't, most times it's not, what I've seen is not that, oh man, they shouldn't have done that because I think they just wasted the money. I don't normally see that. What I see is you're trying to ask top dollars, but you didn't do the work to justify the value that you're bringing to the market. Do you know what I mean? I see the
yeah.
opposite. So most people think, oh, I don't want to overspend. No, you're not actually spending enough.
Your profit on your Twin Brooks one that you're going to get, it's because you put more than 30K into it. If you put 30K into it, you would probably get 30K extra out of it, right?
Yeah. If you put 30K into it, you're not going to get anything out of it. You
With
got to make sure,
flips,
yeah.
you got to put more money in to get more money out. You just have to. I've talked to this one out of province investor. We were looking at properties close to the University of Alberta because that's where he felt good about. And he's like, I'm just looking for a property like around maybe 350, 400 that I can put 30K into, just change the flooring and paint it, maybe switch out a couple light fixtures. And I'm looking to get around $100,000 spread. Can you help me find that property? I don't know if that exists to put 30K in and get 100K spread out just for painting and changing the floors out and a couple light fixtures.
No, yeah. Edmonton is a very healthy market, all things considered. It's a very balanced, healthy market, even though right now it's a seller, quote unquote seller's market because we
Mm-hmm.
have very low inventory. It's still a very much more balanced market, if you ask me. So you don't have these huge discrepancies in prices. So I think coming, especially from Toronto, the GTA region, yeah, you can easily find a house where, not maybe easily, but you can find properties where, man, I bought it for 650 and I only put 30, 40K into it and I sold it for 850. That could happen there, but not here. Here it's very difficult. If you can find it, you call me first. You let me know, I'll
Yes.
take it.
Yeah, anytime I have a property that stands out as a good flip, I'm like, hey, Jay, did you see this? I just sent it
Yeah.
to you. Yep.
I think that's why local investors have an advantage over other province investors is that if you're much more in tune with what the market is doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the numbers and with the neighborhoods. And so I think you're much more realistic on those expectations there.
There's a reason why we say location 3 times. And I think that's the biggest fear of out of province investors is not buying in the right place because they look at our prices and all of them are low compared to what they're used to back home. So they're like, everything's on sale. I should just like get the one that's the most on sale. But oftentimes that one's not in an area where you get that elasticity that we were talking about. So they put their money in the wrong area and they're not getting the returns that they were hoping for.
Yeah, very true. Location is very important.
Location, location,
It was
location.
it was a lesson that people frankly didn't care about in the GTA region, I think, for the last 10, 15 years until now. Now all of a sudden location is important. All those bedroom communities outside of Toronto, if you're living 45 minutes to an hour commute outside of Toronto, those communities just plummeted in value. I don't know, because I'm from Toronto originally, yeah. So I think that people tell me those places outside of Toronto, when I say outside of Toronto, just like on the periphery of Toronto, their prices declined quite considerably. I think there's a reason for that as well, because when the price drop, obviously the properties closer to the downtown core will be more attractive, right? So yeah, no, location is crucial, it's critical, but the rising tide lifts all boats, right? So you look like a genius in a market. And I've made money in bad markets. I've made money in good markets. I guess I'm going through a bull market now. Yeah.
You employ yourself flipping these properties, but people can also hire you for your services. If somebody's looking to reach out to you to get some work done here in Edmonton, what services would you be able to provide them?
Full turnkey. I do everything for them, even my own flips as well. Like I do the design, I do everything in-house, I do everything myself, including a lot of the work as well. And I have my guys full-time that work with me that
Mhm.
also that do the work. So I try to do as
Yeah.
much in-house as possible. Obviously, some trades you have to go get sub it out so you can get your permits and everything for electrical, plumbing, HVAC. Besides that, I try to do as much in-house as possible to keep the cost down. And we do full turnkey services. In fact, I'm wrapping up a basement development for another client on the north side. Yeah,
Nice.
they tried to do an in-law suite in the basement, which I'm doing them. I think we should be wrapping up next week.
Mhm.
So I do that for the clients as well. Plus, I also do that for retail customers as well. So regular homeowners that want to do in-law suite in the basement, we do that. Bathroom develop. I think that's when I first met as well. I think I was working on that bathroom
Yeah.
shower.
Yeah, you're supposed to bring me to it and then I could
Yeah,
demo
I
some stuff to get my anger
I'm
out.
horrible with taking pictures and providing updates. People think I barely exist, but I just have to be more active on social media, I think.
You're too
But I have a
busy
lot more.
living in the moment.
Yeah, I gotta get into the habit of posting more on social media. But yeah, I've done steam showers for the clients. I've done kitchen remodels. I've done basement developments for both the retail customers and also for investors, legal suites. Plus, I also do my own flips. And my flips are obviously more grand in scope. We do
Mhm.
everything top inside out, right? Or outside in. So I guess that's one thing that differentiates me from some of the other contractors is one, I have a investor background. I come from that world as well because I also flip my own houses. Plus, I can do everything, right? So some contractors, they can do basement developments, but they may not know siding or windows or roof or other things, which I can
Mhm.
do, including decks and other things. So
Yeah, you're the jack of all trades, master of all.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
literally done every single one of those things I've told you. Short of pouring concrete and framing a house from scratch, I've done everything else. So.
Beautiful. And if people are looking to reach out to you personally, how can they do that?
I suppose right now the best way would be to through you. I am actually in the process of building out my website, launching my Facebook page and all that stuff. Because I realized I actually do need to get myself out there and put myself out there so people can know I exist.
Those are all my questions for you, Jay.
Oh, yeah, it was a great time. We should
That's
do it
it.
again. Yeah. Or maybe
Yes,
next time we'll
yeah.
talk more about just like a basement development for clients. That's the
I would
dream.
love to talk
But
about like specifically basement suites, what to look out for, expected costs, etc. I
hmm,
think that'd be a really good one. Very hot topic for sure.
100%, absolutely. Anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me,
Thanks for
Jay.
having me. Yeah, absolutely.
Such a pleasure. Have
Okay.
a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you again to Jay for joining me on this episode. He's a perfect person to talk about fix and flips, and it's just always good talking to him. If you're looking to reach out to Jay personally, then you're going to have to go through me first, but I'll be glad to make the introduction. Don't worry. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me. I really hope that you learned something, and I also hope that you have a fantastic day. Bye for now.